Welcome back to Real Housewife Recaps. Today we're covering Below Deck Med Season 5, Episode 1. I like big boats and I cannot lie. I'm excited to be back with this show. I love it. It's a great show to get into during the summer. I'm excited to see what happens and I'm actually pretty excited about this cast. So let's get going. So I have been watching Below Deck every single season, beginning with the original show, and then I've seen every season of Mediterranean, and I love it. It's so good. So I wanted to make a little cast breakdown because at the beginning of the season, I always get confused on who's who. So hopefully this will help me and you remember who is who when we start the season out. So of course we have Captain Sandy. She's at the top there. Hannah is her chief stew. Malia is her bosun, who is in charge of the deck crew, of course. And Kiko is her chef. So then you have Laura and Jessica that work under Hannah. You have Pete, Alex, and Robert that work under Malia. So that's a little guide to who's who, and hopefully it'll keep things straight because I know I'm going to mess up their names. And anyway, here we go. So we kick off with a brand new boat, and it is a beautiful boat. This is the Wellington. I did a little research on it. It used to be named the Wellesley, and they changed it for whatever reason. But it is gorgeous. It is available to charter. I couldn't get a price on it because I was very curious. It just said contact for details. So I'm about ready to charter this boat. So this season we're in Mallorca, Spain, which looks absolutely gorgeous. And we start off Captain Sandy on the boat. We have Hannah, the chief stew, walking up to the boat here. Let's talk about Hannah for a second. So Hannah, again, I'm sure you guys have watched every season like I have, but in case you haven't, Hannah has been on this boat for a long time. I am just not a fan of Hannah. I know some people really like her. I am not one of those people. I guess I could see some good qualities maybe, but especially the last couple seasons have been tough. It's been tough to watch her. She's had a really bad attitude, and it kind of already rears its head in this episode. If anybody dare challenges her, or if she feels threatened in any way by their experience, ooh, she can be a monster. So I think it's going to be interesting to see the dynamic between her and that Laura, which we'll get into. Plus, her and Sandy have definitely gotten into it in the past. Sandy even told her at the end of last season that she didn't think that yachting was her passion. So I'm actually a little surprised to see Hannah back. So we have about 24 hours before the guests arrive. Hannah and Sandy give hugs. Sandy says, I brought Hannah back because I believe Hannah truly wants to do a good job. Sandy talks about white gloves and table settings. So again, I'm just going to fill you in case you haven't been keeping up, but I'm sure you have with Below Deck Med. That has been a huge thing in the past. So on the regular Below Deck, that you had the chief stew, Kate, who does a fantastic job with table setting. She gets really into it. She puts some cool things on the tables, makes the dinners look really nice. And then Hannah has just never cared about it, and she made her feelings known. Sandy talked to her about it before, especially last season. They made a big deal about it, and Hannah just couldn't be bothered. So even this season, Sandy's setting the stage, and of course we'll see later Hannah assigns that job to Laura. So that was just interesting. So again, Hannah's just not into this at all. So then we get to meet the chef, who I really liked. His name is Kiko. That's his nickname. He arrives from Brazil. Sandy has a pep talk with him about people like fresh, not frozen. So you need to use your skill set there. They flash back to the disaster that was last season. Last season, they had this awful quote-unquote chef named Mila who just said really insensitive things and was a terrible chef and ended up getting fired. And one of the stewardesses had to take over being the chef. So it was a whole thing. But we have Kiko, and he looks like he'll be great. So interestingly, this is a huge kitchen. It's the biggest one that I've seen on any of these below deck shows. So what a beautiful galley. So then we have Malia arriving on board. She says, one thing I learned is I don't want to get into these fighting matches or any boat mance, which is really funny considering her past. So again, don't know if you know this, but just for fill-in's sake, I'll tell you, she was on the show a couple of seasons ago, and she was in a boat mance with her bosun, but also with Adam, the chef, the awful chef who just left below deck sailing, and he's just terrible. But good for Malia, because she's worked her way up. She's done a lot of hard work and different jobs, it sounds like, and now she comes back as the bosun who is over all the deckhands. And then we meet this guy who is like the creepiest guy, I think, to be on any of these shows. His name's Pete, and when he gets on the boat, he says, the unit has arrived. Yikes. Very creepy. Another deckhand named Alex arrives. Laura, who I think will be super interesting this season, arrives. She's going to be the second stew under Hannah. And they show where Hannah's talking to her, and it sounds like she's worked on about 45 yachts. It's revealed that she has been chief stew before, and so, of course, Hannah has a fit about this. Hannah has run into this before, but again, I'm just not a fan of Hannah, so I take it as Hannah's threatened by anybody like this, because we've seen in the past where she had the same reaction. A lot of other stews have told her she's lazy and not a good worker. So we get to meet Rob, another deckhand, and we get to meet Jessica, who is the third stew. And it turns out Jessica and Alex know each other. They say they have like a brother-sister relationship. It looks fun and playful. So far, I really like Jessica. And we didn't get to see Alex too much, but he seems fun. So then the captain calls a boat meeting. So they all meet up and they talk about what's expected of them, what's to come. Captain Sandy says she's been hardened from her last crew, that she had people with no motivation, and it makes her a better leader. And I find that funny because I think she's directly talking about Hannah, among others, but that's pretty funny. She said, this season you bring it home or you take it home. Our main goal is to impress the client, and your main goal is to impress me. So good for her. I always like Sandy. I respect her. I think she's a good captain. So then Hannah has a meeting with her staff, her girls here, and she says one of the biggest things is tablescapes. Again, this is just a theme that comes up a lot with Below Deck. She says she's putting Laura on that to be creative as you can be. Laura makes a really funny, like, stab motion, like she's stabbing herself. And this did not sit well with Hannah at all. She says, wait till I'm out of the room before you do that. Laura to camera says, I thought she'd have a better sense of humor. She seems quite uptight as well. So already the tension is there between Hannah and Laura, and I personally here for it. I can't wait to see what happens. So then we have Malia leading her team. We find out Pete is just gross. He's saying things like, watch out, sweetheart, when moving a deck chair. And this is going to come up a lot this season, it sounds like. So then they have a preference sheet meeting. And it's Hannah, Malia, Kiko. Sounds like the guest is Chris Harris. And he's an entrepreneur bringing his sister, Jessica, on to celebrate her birthday. Sandy tells Malia, every time I drop anchor, I want every water toy out. Again, this is a callback because in previous seasons, she's had issues with this where the deckhands don't really want to do that, and they complain about, how much work it is to bring all that stuff out. But Malia takes it in stride and says, absolutely. So after the meeting, we have a very strange interaction that I still don't fully understand between Hannah and Laura. Hannah radios Laura and asks about some beer that was supposed to come in. Laura comes up and they fight over the beer. It was very confusing. Laura's saying that Hannah didn't word it right. Hannah is just pissed at the world. It turns out the beer's on the aft deck, but it again just shows the interesting dynamic already right out of the gate that these two do not like each other at all. So the crew's finishing up for the night. We see Jessica and Rob getting to know each other. Rob used to model. And we also get to see Pete and Laura flirting, which is kind of funny. Hannah and Malia are sharing a room, so they're just kind of talking. Both of them sound like they've had significant others for about a year. Then it's time for the guests to arrive. Hannah takes them on a tour of the boat. Again, this is a beautiful boat. It's my favorite so far. It's by far the biggest, more luxurious than some of the other ones. So the boat's trying to leave. We do see a little bit of mess up by Alex. He's dropping the wrong line, but it ends up being fine. Pete, again, such a weirdo. He leaves his post before he's supposed to. So the captain gets him back where he's supposed to be. The guests seem perfectly fine. They sit down to have a meal, and it comes out later than they thought it would. So I don't know if this is gonna be an issue where the chef just runs at his own schedule here, but his food looked delicious, and the captain seemed to be happy with it, as well as the guests. So then we see another very interesting Hannah and Laura dynamic here. Hannah is putting out cheat sheets for the girls of, the stuff they're supposed to get done. Sounds like there's some confusion over timing. So Laura's expressing her confusion about what they talked about, and Hannah says, well, it's just like I told you, and they flash back. So again, these two are definitely going to implode, and it's going to be funny to watch. Not too much else happens here, except for Pete is an idiot, and he admits that he didn't know he was on an island. He thought he was on the coast of Spain, not on an island just off the coast. So I thought that was pretty funny. So then the guests sit down for dinner, and the dinner looks amazing. It's this steak that looks delicious. So we see a flash of Laura, who is mad. She says she's being treated like a third stew. This is where I do not agree with her. She was mad because she has to clean cabins and she doesn't want to. And to that, I say tough. The captain tries the dinner, says it's absolutely delicious, which makes the chef super happy. Then we see Laura having her dinner. Apparently, it's a big deal that she took 30 minutes for dinner. I guess she was just supposed to eat quickly, but the Chiron shows it's 30 minutes, which I thought was pretty funny. Hannah radios her and then eventually comes down to talk to her to tell her to clear the main deck aft. And Laura is just not happy at all. She doesn't even acknowledge Hannah. She goes up to work on it. Hannah follows her up and tells her that she'd like her to acknowledge her, which is fair. I'm not a Hannah fan, but that was pretty rude that Laura didn't even acknowledge her when she was talking to her. Laura says she doesn't have time, to which I said, ooh. Oh, I love that she's poking the bear. That's pretty funny. Hannah says, I would start showing a bit of respect if I was you. And that's how the episode ends, which is a great way to end it. So then we see a look into the season. We see a bunch of drunk guests welcoming some people back that they've had previously. Jessica looks like she's hooking up, and there's discussion if Laura's name is Lana or Laura. And Hannah has problems. It sounds like she's going to have problems with Malia and Laura. So I'm looking forward to all of that. It sounds good to me, and I can't wait to see the next episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think, how you think this season's going to go, and what you think so far. And just tell me your thoughts on Below Deck Med. I'm very curious. You guys can find me on Twitter. I'm at Real Recaps. I'm covering Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Real Housewives of New York, as well as this show. I do some Fleabag recaps. I'll recap it all, so just let me know what you want to see. And I thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy. Bye-bye.